Matlan. It's no secret that India's economy is in deep trouble. The GDP is at 5%, that's the lowest in more than 6 years. Auto sales are at their lowest in over 20 years. Rural wages, their growth has collapsed to just 1% in 2018-19 compared to 15% in 2013-14. Unemployment is at a 45-year high. So it's bad, but over the last week, much of the news has focused on the dreaded two M's, maths and millennials. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that the fact that millennials are using car apps like Ola and Uber is the reason that car sales are down. Now, she got a lot of flack for it simply because the data doesn't match her claims. And then it doesn't explain why truck sales are also down as well. And then you had Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal saying on Thursday that how numbers don't matter. After all, maths didn't help Einstein discover gravity. However, it did make Mr. Goyal trend on Twitter all day. But that's not the point. People do make mistakes. Mr. Goyal has owned up to that. Yes, Newton discovered gravity and not Einstein. But the bigger point here is the government taking the economic slowdown as seriously as it should be? Is it time to put partisan politics aside, sit down with someone like Dr. Manmohan Singh and try and find solutions? As always on The Big Fight, we begin with our opening punch from all our panelists, 1 minute each to all of them, and we begin with Mr. Nitin Desai, the former Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India. Mr. Desai, is the government taking this slowdown seriously?
Well, there are signs that they are worried about it, certainly, which was not the case about a couple of months ago. You see, basically, we are facing two slowdowns. One is a structural slowdown, the inability of our economy to get to a growth rate much beyond, say, 6.5%. This is because of long-term reasons, but I also believe that there are certain immediate reasons, like I believe the impact of demonetization has been far deeper than has been admitted by the government, particularly in terms of the impact that it had on small enterprises who shut down shop, the workers went away, and reviving those enterprises is going to take time. And there's also a cyclical slowdown. That's what has brought the thing down to 5%. And you see this in the auto sales, you see this in other places. I believe that this is something which can reverse itself in time. But what it really requires is a rethink on policies in agriculture, in small industries, in the area of finance, and in the area of export promotion. 4 key areas where major policy changes are required if you want to get back to a high growth rate.
A good opening comment there from you, Mr. Desai. We have Prateek Dasgupta, who is the COO of the Dot, which is a startup. Prateek, what do you think?
As a startup, we also have a lot of challenges. The foremost challenge which we are facing are like liquidity in the market. So, if the government can give us some easy loans, not only us but to the industry all as a whole, then the economy slowdown will be curbed to a larger extent. Number one. Number two is there are a lot of manpower requirement which is there, but the skilled manpower is not available still. So, that is one of the basic reasons for the slowdown, because we are unable to employ right kind of people. Next is your consumption. Consumption has to be increased by the people. In one hand, we are seeing that the automobile industry is going down, but on the other hand, the new age technology companies or retail companies, which are online retail companies, they are growing at 40% CAGR. So, on one hand, something is coming down, but the other hand, something is going up. So, the new age technology is going up.
Okay, so that's interesting, the contradictions that are coming out in the data and some of the indicators that we're seeing. Supriya Srinath is with us, and Supriya, of course, is a former business journalist. She also fought for Parliament on a Congress ticket in this general election. Supriya, I mean, are you getting a sense that they're taking this seriously, that they're genuinely worried? What explains then some of the comments we've seen?
No, I don't think they're genuinely worried. I think they're still very involved, and I don't wear a partisan hat when I say that. I think they're still very focused on headline management. What else explains the fact that the Commerce Minister, after putting out numbers that were unreal yesterday, forget the Govt, spent a large part of his day making clarifications one after the other? What explains the fact that consumption is at an 18-month low and you're still obsessed with Uber and Ola? What explains the fact that auto sector is down? And I think what we miss sight of is the fact that, and I agree with my friend here, that there are sectors going up and sectors coming down. but there are sectors that are the job guzzlers for the Indian economy, whether it's textiles, auto, metals. You pick up sector after sector and there is acute pain across sectors. We cannot talk in lofty generalities. We cannot dismiss data. We cannot say science and math and statistics is Luddite. We cannot say millennials are to be blamed for our slowdown. And I think on that count, the government is in denial.
Like a good TV anchor, you stuck to time. Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh of the BJP is standing next to you. Mr. Ghosh.
I will start with the quotations what Mr. Piyush Goyal has given. The central point of the quotation is that there is no mathematics. Now, even the gravity, if you talk about Einstein, the gravity equation of the Einstein is theory of relativity. Gravity is involved into that, every aspect E mc square. So,
okay, well, I'll come to
so
that later.
what I mean to say that today, today we are already $2 trillion economy, to $3 trillion economy, and now we are heading for a $5 trillion economy. There are certain slumps, there are certain ups and downs are there, but again I will see this is cyclical, not a structural. Government has taken enough measures to support banks, to support NBFC, for cutting down the interest rates, house loans, a lot of, for each and every sector. You cannot say the government is not responding in a positive way or a proactive way. So, if you say within 1 minute I have to finish, if you say government is aware of it and government has taken enough measures, we can discuss in detail.
Okay.
So, nothing to worry about it.
All right, we discuss in detail, but I mean, just to remind you that Einstein gravity didn't happen. Kocha Nilima is standing next to you. She's an author, she's a journalist, someone who's covered rural issues for decades now. Nilima, your reading of the situation, I mean, have we grasped how serious it is?
It's quite serious, and what's more serious is that the situation has been dire. The crisis has been in the making for the last 20 years or more. There was a period of time like for the last 20 years there have been 3.2 lakh farmer suicides. Just to give one number, there was one farmer killing himself every 8 hours in some states of this country. That was how serious the situation was. Now when the rest of the economy is in a bad shape, the government, the country is looking at rural economy, the rural India, to revive it by increasing consumption. What is a poor farmer going to consume? That's my question. I'm just back from Beed, Marathwada, one of the worst affected districts of the country. They are working twice as much as they were before, and they are eating half as much as they were eating before. What are they going to consume? Are we going to make sure that they consume more biscuits, more shampoos? Is that how we are going to revive the economy? I do not buy this argument that the government is taking it seriously. In fact, the government is not at all taking it seriously. Okay. None of the governments have.
Okay, your time's up. But we've got the dreaded M, the millennial, Meghnad, who is of course an editor with News Laundry. Meghnad, is it your fault?
So there are two things that are happening here. One is of course the rhetoric of millennial and maths, which is a typical case of someone trying to find blame to put when there should be no blame coming on them. The second thing is, are they worried? I think they are, but they should show it more. If they are worried, they should show it more, because the next step towards fixing it is first admitting that something is going wrong. And if you're trying to find blame and putting it on millennials, maths or anything else, or there might be another statement next week, I feel that they are doing disservice to a lot of businessmen who are actually functioning in a very bad global climate right now and trying to survive in whatever way possible. The other thing is they need to start thinking about stability. You can't just come and give a budget every Friday and expect the investors to come running after that. You have to make sure that the policy announcements that you're doing are timed, and you have to give time for them to take effect as well, because that's how investors will come.
All right, Meghnad, thanks very much. So we've got all our opening statements. Let's open this up, and I'd like to take this to Mr. Desai first, something that Supriya said, and I think it's something for the entire panel to ponder. She says that the government is too focused on headline management at the moment, and as a result seems to have sort of not focused as much on the real problem at hand. Do you think that that is part of the problem?
Well, let me say, as somebody who's been involved in governments for a long time, most governments are very headline obsessed, and I think it is possible. What is missing, in my view, is that, yes, the government, I think, has focused very much on delivery, getting stuff to people, get LPG cylinders to people, get water to houses. They are delivery oriented. But what matters is the policy behind the delivery. It's not enough to say that I'll deliver LPG cylinders to every rural household. I need a proper energy policy to cope with the challenges ahead. Similarly, in other areas. But I want to pick on two things. One, the agriculture one. I think this is a very crucial one. And she's right that in a sense the policy has been running aground for a long time. It's not just now. You see, basically we set our policy, our agricultural framework in the mid-60s when we were facing a crisis of starvation and famine. And then we set up the system, and today we have a system where the government support for two crops, wheat and rice. Most of the procurement is for that, but they only account for 23% of total agricultural output. If I include other stuff like tea, coffee and so on, for which there is organized procurement, will go up to about maybe 30%. The real problem is 70% of the output of farmers does not really get any form of serious public support. We have to change this. We did all this at a time when my rice and wheat production was 100 kilograms per capita per year. Today my rice and wheat production is 160 kilograms per capita per year. By simply focusing everything on two crops, we are basically penalizing the farmers who grow the other crops. We are unnecessarily encouraging people to grow crops of which we have a surplus. So I think the biggest change we need.
There's no long-term plan.
No, and we must let farmers sell what they want, where they want. None of this business of saying you can only sell it in the local
Mr.
mandi.
Ghosh, then answer Supriya's criticism on the headline management part of it.
See, this is the first time he's taking no long-term being in government bureaucrats before. Whatever measures have been taken since 2014 for the farmers, be it insurance, be it the soil card, be it the minimum support price increase, be it the subsidy on certain equipments, be it the direct access to markets, be it creating the infrastructure. This is whole entirely has been given to the farmers in order to improve their whatever they recovered from that.
So why is the rural wage growth collapsed so dramatically since
see
2013?
growth, see, again I am telling you,
From 15%
today
to
the
1%.
RBI, if you say
From
that
15% to 1% as per official data. 5 years ago, the rural wage growth was 15%, it's now 1%.
see, if you take the data on this quarter, you are talking about this quarter, but if you see
I'm
the
talking
first,
about this year, 2018-19
yeah, 2018-19
versus 2013-14, 15% to 1%.
this I
Can
don't
I just
know about
come in
this
for a
data.
minute?
Yeah.
I think it's also because once again the focus is on the headline. The focus is on the fact that we will double farmer income. Where is the roadmap to do that? I mean, all of us would like to see that happen. And Nidhi, as a party person and as a former journalist, and as somebody who's a citizen of this country, I think what pains me is that they have the political mandate to take decisions. They still don't. They're still obsessed with
This
headlines,
twice,
and
I
that
can
causes
answer it. I can answer
concern.
it. Twice the income what we are promised
Where
in
are we on that
2014,
roadmap?
that is in totality, right? We have created the infrastructure, we have given them a lot of
And
subsidy.
have we moved, sir? Have we moved an inch on doubling their income? No, we have not. Their wages have
If you
collapsed.
see the minimum support price is much better than whatever they used to get in 2009,
And what explains the
2014,
wages
right?
collapsing?
No, that's a different story altogether.
How is it a
That's
different story? It is
Question-
not, sir.
Mr. Desai wants
Yes,
to come in.
would
Then
say,
I'd like to come to
I
Nilima
don't
on this.
keep,
Yeah.
see, minimum support prices are announced. For all practical purposes, they are effective only for two crops, and that too in a certain area. Most wheat procurement is in Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP.
Sir, what about giving the insurance coverage right from the
Let us see-
seeding
has
and
the
let us see
situation
what
what
happens.
about the giving the market access?
Please
What about
remember,
giving the
Mr.
infrastructure
Ghosh,
for this
what
market
is the
access?
actual payouts on insurance coverage? But I would say one more thing. I think we are underestimating the extent to which demonetization disrupted
Absolutely.
the rural economy in November of 2016. And this is not something that one needs to prove, because the Agriculture Ministry's own submission to the Parliament Committee has said that. And I'm basically quoting from that. So I'd say demonetization impact has been far deeper than what we have accepted so far. It was not something which wore itself out in 6 months. The consequences of what happened in those 6
being
months
felt
are
now.
still with us.
Nilima, can you expand on that, because you know this better than anybody else?
I just wanted to say that we are focused on the macro, the numbers, as compared to then and now, and now we are getting to know. What about the micro? Micro is where lives are led every day. And my issue with headline management is this: it's great to give hope. I understand democratic politics. This is how governments operate. They have to give hope. That's how they win elections. But all governments know how serious the poverty and distress is in rural areas. Now, giving a cylinder does not solve the problem because they don't have anything to cook. Giving a toilet doesn't solve the problem. These are great headlines in Delhi, but गाँव में जाके देखें, it does not translate into actual as a benefit to the farmer. Now, if they wanted to do something, they should have done. They should have had a medium and a long-term plan, which we don't see the government having for especially farmers and rural areas, including women, including labor. These are the people who get worst affected when there is an economic slowdown like this. These are the people who got worst affected during GST and demonetization. There is no plan, we don't see that.
Okay, let me ask Prateek though, that do you see it all sort of through this headline management prism, or do you think that there is a genuine attempt to try and maybe address some of the criticism? I mean, at the end of the day, you know, a lot of the things that Nirmala Sitharaman announced in her budget, she did roll them back. And that's not easy to do either.
Sure.
But
yes.
that also erodes trust and faith in
investments. But they can argue and say that we're willing to listen.
As a non-political person, because I'm not.
Sure. I'm just asking you your perspective.
So from industry perspective, if I say, then I would rather like to say that there are a lot of policies which are being made. Yes, they are for good of the industry, but the ground reality is that implementation is important because they are not getting much implemented within the ground, and so we have to still struggle as we were doing earlier. For example, we are into a green logistics, as I said. Lot of policies has been made in the green logistics, that green number plate, you don't have to pay registration charges, and a lot of other policies has been made. But are they really being followed in the states? It's actually no. We are running hundreds of electric vehicles, but we still pay registration charges, we are still asked for permits. So, a lot of other issues are there which actually on the ground it's not getting implemented. Yes, we also believe that slowly and steadily it will get implemented because overnight nothing can happen. So, maybe government is doing their best.
Mr. Ghosh, is part of the problem then, I mean, forget Einstein for a moment, but you know, when the finance minister says that millennials are using Ola and Uber more and that is the reason why car sales are down. Now, you're looking at now, you know, car manufacturers stopping production, you know, truck sales are down. And the data doesn't add up anyway. It doesn't match with what she said. So, is there again, you know, a sense of denial here about, you know, addressing the real problem? Blame it on the millennials.
Nidhi, you're showing half empty, but let me show the half filled part of it.
Just
First
show
of
us
all,
the truth.
whenever the finance minister has mentioned about the millennium, what he mean to say, even the businessman, they are very cautious about the expenditure budgets. So, they are telling that, okay, if you take a Ola Uber, it is much cheaper to use the Ola Uber and get the job done. And
but it doesn't, that data doesn't add up.
No,
there is no
data,
significant rise in the number of Ola Uber users and decline in auto sales.
Many, we are sitting,
I'm
we
talking
are in
about
September,
facts, Mr. Ghosh.
But from January to September, please, if you have the data, please read it out. From January, February, March, what was the growth rate of this automobile sector?
Sir, it doesn't correspond to the slump in the auto sector at all.
What about commercial vehicles and mopeds, sir? Why are trucks going down? Are millennials looking to trucks?
You are not supposed to purchase the trucks.
Commercial vehicles, sir, commercial vehicle sale is an indicator.
That is because of the BS.
Let me finish,
that is,
sir.
Yes, she has clarified.
Commercial vehicle sale is an indicator.
Because of the transfer to the electrical vehicles.
It's an indicator of economic activity.
That is
Mopeds have gone down, sir. Two-wheelers have gone down. Are you telling me that millennials are not buying two-wheelers and mopeds?
Can I ask Meghna to come in?
You are talking about millennials, we are talking about the two-wheelers moped. There's a different story for two-wheeler mopeds.
But I'm saying
the
facts don't add up,
sir.
The facts don't add up.
39% drop in commercial
Every
vehicle
day
sale.
See, when Indian buy a car, they buy a car for 10-15 years. Now, if you have an apprehension that within 5-6 years or 10 years, it's going to be scrapped. So, they have been a bit apprehensive and waiting for the right decision from the government, which FM has cleared it out.
To understand that when the finance minister gave that statement, she also mentioned that there are some studies that show that this is happening. We don't know what those studies are. So, maybe they can make it public so that we can know for sure that that's the reason. So, let's just admit there was a study, for instance, and that, you know, millennials are a problem, I guess. But then what do you do after that? Tell me that. Like, you're saying millennials are responsible for low auto sales. Now, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to make sure you understand the millennial mindset and then make sure that, you know, because if you look at it, millennial spending has changed over time. This generation likes to spend on indulgences more than the previous generation. There is no two ways about it. But then is the government then planning to actually do more, say for instance, have like a scheme for restaurants then, like to produce more entrepreneurs who are going into the restaurant industry or like the delivery industry, so that you know what the auto sales that you have lost, you can actually recover from some other sector which is actually growing. So the service sector has been growing. There have been figures which show that the service sector has been growing. Manufacturing is down, everything else is down. But then is the government actually saying this? What is happening right now is that I do think they are living in denial, and they should stop, because once they stop and admit there is a problem, only then can we move forward and actually talk about what you are going to do about it.
Mr. Ghosh, do you admit there's a problem?
First of all, again and again,
Yes
government has
Yes
given a statement, first of all,
Yes.
that
Is
this
there a
is a temporary slump, which is now going to regain
So
in the
yes,
next
there is a
couple of
problem.
quarters, number one.
Okay.
Number two, there is no radical problems. There is no structural issues or structural problem. The
Minor
problem is
problems.
cyclical problems. And government is in the transition, like bank mergers, certain laws has been changed, and the impact of lot of laws which has been changed in the last ministry. So overall impact is that a temporary slump is going on. Again, it will recover, like your factory production outlets is now on the upswing. Your first of all, the inflation is under control. See, if you're talking about GDP,
But
if
why are you
GDP is less,
obsessing
the
with
inflation
numbers?
is under control.
Why are you obsessed
Right,
with numbers?
government expenditure is
You
growing.
shouldn't obsess with numbers.
Sir, I just want to make
Government
I
number
just have
shows
one point to make,
that
sir.
Why?
In your body, if your blood
Because
pressure is high, the
somewhere-
number
maybe
shows your
somewhere
blood
we
pressure is
miss-
high.
somewhere
Number
we
shows
miss-
your glucose is high.
Sir,
Number shows your
good,
cholesterol
but
is
Sir,
high.
Goyal
somewhere we
just
miss
said
a
the
very
opposite
important
yesterday.
point, that automobile industry is one sector which is a job intensive sector, like textile, like real estate, like metals. There is pain across those sectors. There are 26 industries that are dependent on automobiles alone. Point number one.
Yeah,
Point
that's
number two, inflation. I mean, let's not make that our calling
I want
card.
to ask you a question.
Inflation
What
is
was
also
your automobile
a sign
sector
of
growth in January to March?
inflation. Low inflation is
I'm
woefully
asking
also
January
a
to
sign
March, what was
of
the
low
growth?
demand.
Mr.
Can I-
Desai.
Consumption has come to an 18-month high, 18-month low.
If I could just interrupt. One, I wish I could say confidently that millennials are frugal. I have two millennial sons. But
not.
oh no, I don't think so. But let's get back. The automobile sector, it matters very much because it was one of the major success stories
Precisely.
of Indian growth. It was one of the few areas where what I've been describing as sort of backward integration took place. That is not just automobiles. The whole component industry came up. And it's one of the great success stories of Indian industry. That's why we should worry more. Second, yes, part of the reason it was, with a lot of purchases were EMI oriented. And with certain stagnation in formal sector jobs, rural distress, people are not willing to buy cars and scooters. But how do you account for trucks? 50% plus drop in the sale of trucks. Now that is a reflection.
That is because of the BS.
No.
And
No, sir, that is
because
not. That
of
is
the
low
BS. They are
economic
waiting for that,
activity.
waiting
No,
for that
no,
change
no,
in
no,
the
it's not just
BS.
BS4.
We have clarified
No,
that.
it's
No,
not
sir.
just,
We have
it's not
clarified
just the
that.
BS4 and 6. The point is, I think what underlies this is the distress that you're seeing in the manufacturing sector. Remember this, last quarter was 0.6%
Versus
manufacturing.
12% growth last year.
And
That's how it's crashed.
0.6%
Yeah.
growth in manufacturing. That is what is cutting down on these demands.
Nilima first and then
But
Meeta.
automobile
Yes,
exports are growing at 14.5% in financial year
So exports between
2019.
April and July have
Nilima.
collapsed as
No,
a
I
result.
understand.
That's
this
what I'm talking about. April, July is not the yardstick always.
Sorry,
right?
let me. I'm just saying that I understand the need for monopolizing the perception that the economy is not in a bad shape. I understand that's how a government has to operate. But how long will they deny the kind of distress which affects about 800 million people in this country, on whom we are going to depend on to get us out of this spot we are in? Every second person in this country is employed in the agricultural and rural areas. What are we doing for them? I agree, all these sectors are of great importance. Automobile, gem and jewelry, these are the numbers which we keep getting. But what about livelihood of those people on whose income you're going to actually bank on to come back into a normal state of economy? That's the question which the
Absolutely.
government has not been able to
Meghna, one
answer.
sec. I want to ask Prateek about this. That as someone from industry, do you think this is a structural problem or a cyclical one?
See, to some extent is structural, we believe so, because there is a shift of choice of people also. people are not willing to buy any more vehicle. Maybe it is BS6 or electrical vehicles are, people are more preferring electrical vehicles, or they want to wait and watch that how electric vehicles perform, because there's a new,
There's no infrastructure.
there's
for
no
them anyway,
infrastructure. But government is pushing for the electric vehicles, and people are thinking that maybe diesel vehicles or CNG vehicles or petrol vehicles may not be usable in the future. So maybe they want to wait for that, and they want to watch what is going to happen. So maybe to some extent that is structural. So what we can do is that, still, since government is pushing for the electric vehicle, which is a very good part of it, because we need that, there is the need of the hour. So why not train those people, those who are already in the automobile sector, to accommodate them in the electric manufacturing vehicles? And because we don't find people as a user of those vehicles, we don't find mechanics to actually.
Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, there's a
You
bigger
think?
yeah,
You think?
there's a very problem.
Can I make an economic point here? I
Can't
think the
be
point that
overnight.
we are missing is NBFCs are not lending. There is a huge issue there. Who is going to buy an
Which is a
automobile
point he raised
when
also,
lending is
yeah.
not available? There is a 28% tax on automobiles. Why is the government not waking up to that? Why should GST on automobiles not be lowered? Why is the government not talking about real issues and, you know, dragging in millennials causing a slowdown? They are not. There are bright spots.
70,000 crore has been pumped in by the governments to the banks in order to facilitate this giving loans and others. So government is doing time to time whatever measures are required.
But interest rates are not.
No, but that's the
The
problem.
RBI is
That's
cutting
the
down,
exact
cutting
problem
down
that
their
I'm coming
repo
to.
rates also.
Which is?
That's the exact problem I'm coming to. They're taking measures time to time when required, because it also speaks about how they got such a large mandate and they're trying to micromanage the economy. And if I think Pratik will agree with me when I say that when you put in too many policies in very short duration, businessmen get scared. The markets get scared.
Absolutely.
And if you need stability for things to work, for instance, you give subsidies for electric vehicles, right? Next Friday, you don't know if they will come out and suddenly say, oh, we are removing it now, because that we have seen that they are doing that.
Yes.
So it's a question of micromanaging the economy, which is absolutely a no-no. If you want innovation to happen in the electric vehicle industry, first let them get their head around the current policy you have, and then you can maybe tinker with it, maybe reduce the rates, maybe do something about it. The second thing you have, sir said, was that the government expenditure has increased. Now, people don't know that when the government expenditure increases, the GDP goes up, because a government expenditure is counted in the GDP. So the easiest way for a government to show high GDP growth is to spend more, right? And we have to understand where they are spending as well, and I hope the BJP spokesperson will be able to answer that. Is this money being spent on investing in capital, right? Are they spending more on infrastructure versus are they giving more bailout money to banks, right? Because the bailout money is a wasted effort, but investment in capital and infrastructure and real long-term things will actually kickstart the economy. So that would be a good point forward.
I'll answer it. The policy of the government is like this. First of all, the huge NPA was there, 12 to 13 lakhs crore NPA. We are trying to reduce the NPA. We have got laws, we have got NCLT. We are also reducing recovery of NPAs about 1.2 lakhs crore to 1.5 lakhs crores. So one side we are reducing the NPA. Margin of the banks will further reduce the burden on the banks on account of NPA, and infusion of capital to the bank in order to lend more and more money to the SME and MSME sectors. And he is talking about that long-term policies. Of course, GST Council is been constituted by the respective finance minister of all the states. They have met till now, if I am not wrong, 21 times, and 1300 items have been under GST. So
you
it is
think
not
that 28% tax should go on cars?
That's what I'm telling you. It is the GST Council to decide.
What do you think?
Because GST Council is consisting of all the finance ministers.
He's
So we
talking
take a
about
very
the quality of
democratic
government
view.
expenditure. That's not the question you're
Right.
answering, sir.
Now the government expenditure again,
Yeah.
we are expending heavily on the infrastructure. You see in railways, in ports, in roads and highways. This country has never seen the growth of roads and highways the way this government has done for last 6 years. So I can give you the data for that.
Rural wages going down? If they are investing so
Yeah,
much
I
in
was going-
infrastructure,
come
then
back to
why
the
are
same
rural
point.
wages going down? Where is the money
Rural
going?
wages have really collapsed.
Now I
And
give you
that
an
is the most
example.
worrying
Initially,
indicator.
during the UPA time, per kilometer road, it was 5 to 6 crores per kilometer. Now we are paying up to 18
UPA
crores
has
per
come and
kilometer.
gone.
I want to
So
quote.
there is no question of reducing the wage.
Can I
Mr.
say, I think,
Desai,
I think
Mr. Desai.
because it gets too contentious. Yes, I think the road performance on the road side has been good. It is something we must recognize. There's no point in our getting into a political battle on this front. But let's change the topic a little. Don't keep on talking of yesterday's problems. Take something which was just mentioned. The new economy requires a very different policy framework.
Absolutely.
And the point was made very clearly. You don't want too much the government sitting there saying, "Ye achhi cheez hai, wo buri cheez hai." Leave it open.
Yes.
Let people decide. Let the market open up. Let there be much more venturesome capital out there. That is not going to come from
We have
public
actually
sector.
become
In the
more
last
protectionist.
budget,
Can
we
I
have
just
opened up
complete?
the
It
markets.
is not going to come
Entire
from public
capital
sector
market we have
banks.
opened up.
Focus on your education and skill development. The point he mentioned, that if he wants to run his things, he needs people who can at least read a manual.
Yes.
He can't get people who can even read a manual. Open up the system for small producers. Open up the system for agriculturists. Get the government out of being somebody who thinks they can know what is right for everybody. This is
The
today
micromanaging
important.
that Meghnad was
Get
talking
out of
about.
micromanagement.
So that's what we are
create
doing.
a broad
Government
framework.
is not doing the business. They are
So
providing
I think,
infrastructure.
in all fairness, there are things that are being done which are helpful. That's fine.
I can give you
The
1, 2, 3, 4.
infrastructure
I can give all
development
the
is a
count
good
on that.
idea. Infrastructure development is a good idea. I think education, I wish we did more.
And that is
I
why
mean,
government is
education
coming
is
out of,
something we are not
this
focusing on.
PSU who
Can
is
I
sick.
ask you, what are the
42
three
PSUs
things
being
that you
sold
think
because
the
of the
government
sick.
is doing right and the three things it's doing wrong, honestly?
See, there are a lot of things which government is doing right. I would rather say so. Yeah, infrastructure they are developing. That's we should appreciate that the highways have gone so good and have flyovers and all these things are very nice now as compared to earlier. In other terms, I can't number them as three, but this is one point which is very, very evident, as rightly said by Mr. Meghnad Desai. Yeah, Mr. Desai. But what wrong I can say few of them. Yes, micromanagement, government is doing too much of micromanagement, yes, but in investment front, they have to invest and give the banks mandate to invest in new age companies or new age technology companies wherein the growth potential is very high, but now the banks have not yet started lending money. Even if they are lending, the rate of interest is so high that it makes it unviable. For example, if I am looking into logistics and we need 100 electric vehicles to ply on the roads, I get it at a 14% rate of interest, whereas CNG and diesel vehicles still come at 10-12%. Right. So, government is not doing enough. Even in the manufacturing sector, we are still importing from China most of the parts required for the electric vehicles. Although government is pushing for make in India, but they are coming in knockdown basis and getting assembled over here. Is it actually really helping us? They have to invest over here to make the motors, to make the battery cells, to make the other components, electronic components. So we are not doing it.
I would just want to take the Make in India point forward. You know, it was launched with such media blitzkrieg. Make in India, let me just put numbers out
Has
there.
everything.
I mean, it answers everything. Today, India's imports from China have doubled in the last 5 years. It's 6,000 rupees per person versus 3,000 when this government came into office in its first tenure. And the second thing is pure, simple economics. India's GDP constitutes 2/3 of it is consumption. We must push investment, but we cannot take our eyes off consumption, and it is consumption that has begun to take a hit. We have to realize 2/3 of our GDP, we are a consumption-led economy. She spoke about rural consumption. I entirely agree. It is urban consumption that's also taking a toll, whether it's parley or whether it's FMCG goods, whether it's metals, whether it's auto. Consumption has taken a hit, and which is why growth has lowered. We somehow are not talking about consumption in the same breath as much as investment.
Mr. Ghosh.
See, first of all, this country, she is talking about the consumption, and as far as investment is concerned, last 6 years, highest FDI has reached this country, number one. Number two, if you see the Make in India, the recent, our Rafale deal, how this government has restructured the deal, that after the delivery of the first lot, the rest of the will be manufactured mostly in India, right? No government in last 70 years even thought of that. We always have a screwdriver technology. Being a technologist, I can say is screwdriver technology. Now this is the first time government has made a condition to manufacture at least 40% of the spare parts over here. So Skill India, what we are talking about, what we thought about, who they will get a hands-on training, while these components manufacturing companies will be spread throughout India. So we have taken initiatives, and each of the government, because government cannot say the private, always government is asking the private to do that. The Tatas also start doing it.
Why is investment sentiment so low? Why is there no private investment right now? Why is the sentiment so down domestically, particularly?
No. This is the reason.
Why are Indian companies so morose right now?
See, first of all, the private investment is always goes like a sinusoidal curve. It goes up and goes down and all,
Okay.
but government expenditure, the government invested. See, even if you take the same time in the last year, the private investment was pretty good. Now this is a temporary, I am telling you, that is why I am telling you, cyclical and temporary slump. Government expenditure in other way is going up. All the generation of the unorganized sector, organized sector, because of the government expenditure is also going high, which is a last 70 years.
So the gross fixed capital formation, the simple indicator of private investment, has stuck where it is. Let us talk facts.
But
let us not dismiss
this
data.
is not permanent affair. That's what I'm talking
It
about.
has been permanent for the last 5 years. That's all that I'm saying.
The temporary word is a little too
Exactly. We are
Too
in
often
denial
bandied
because
about. Neelima, just on this point of the rural distress, just coming back to that for a moment, because what Mr. Desai flagged right in the beginning is that we're feeling and we're seeing the impact of demonetization in the rural economy now. What does the government need to do to change that? What is the one short term or two short term things that need to be done before you look at the long term steps? Because the crisis is now and you need to find a way to address it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to talk about the infrastructure because on the panel was talking about highways. I just wanted to say, yes, the roads are being made. We all appreciate the highways being made. Where are the connecting roads to the villages? There are no connecting roads to the villages. There are no connecting roads to markets. These are village roads, panchayat roads, state roads. I tried traveling on them. It takes sometimes days to cover just 100 kilometers. So that's a state affair, sir. It happens to be part of India. But
you've got state governments in majority of states in India, sir.
My argument.
The states we are, just see the condition over there. Go to Madhya
Nidhi,
Pradesh.
what I wanted to say
contested elections in UP.
Nidhi, what I wanted to say was look at our neighbor. China is being given as an example here. China's manufacturing power today is where it is because it began with agricultural reforms. You cannot go ahead without your mainstay, fundamental, the pivot on which everything stands being shaky. And this is a government, that's exactly what I'm saying, whether it is this government or earlier governments. My problem has been that the simplest, the easy accessible route or solution has been to give money in the hands of the poor so that the consumption levels are maintained so that your economy showed health. Now that I do not think is the way forward. The government has to have short, medium and long-term plans on how to improve income of the farmer. And that has to be done through, as the panel has been saying, through technology. But one of the first things which has to be done, and I mean, I can't insist on this enough, are the millennials, the rural millennials. I mean, we keep talking about the urban millennials, the people who travel, I guess, in Ola and Uber according to the various ministers. But my argument is, how about those millennials? They are also part of India. They are also millennials of Indian origin. Let's talk about them. What are they going to? That's my short-term, immediate. I think the step which has to be taken is let Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman make a statement about what her plan is for the rural millennials. The people who are in BPL families, those are millennials too. What is the solution for them?
You know, I absolutely agree with her when I say that, you know, this Ola and Uber mentality is a very privileged mentality also. Ola and Uber is not everywhere. There are millennials everywhere though. Yes. So that is one thing. The second thing is, you know, there are...
I said you pests.
Thanks, Nidhi. There are so many, you know, side effects that happen to headline management, right? What we have seen since 2014 is headline management is done through policy, right? They will announce a big policy, they will do a press conference, there will be like a big blast on social media, there will be news channels going after this and like promoting it everywhere. Take a recent example, right? The merger of banks, right? So fine, you've merged the banks together, etc., etc. But what the industry wanted to hear was, wait, are you going to stop them from being just useless, right? They are not giving credit. There is a credit crunch. The demand is not being supplied by the banks. So what are you going to do about it? Just merging banks and making them bigger so that they're too big to fail is not a solution. Then there is another example. I'm very surprised this wasn't brought up yet. Global factors, right? So global factors bogey is another thing. Now, one of the logic behind the economic slowdown and the defense now is that there are global factors which are affecting our economy worldwide and Indian economy, and therefore the growth rate is going down.
True.
It is true, exactly.
No,
I'm saying you're absolutely right.
We are a $2.7 trillion economy.
Sir, I'm not
What about China? 6%.
Absolutely, I agree.
It's a $14.7 trillion economy. We are a $2.7 trillion
okay, so
economy.
I brought in global factor, that's why. But yeah, she's right actually. The global factors are affecting our economy, and despite that we are growing at 5%. So that's a great thing. But then you have to also explain it to me that are you saying the global factors will improve in the next coming 6 months? Because from the way I see it, there is a US-China trade war going on. There is a Brexit that is about to happen that is going to cause chaos probably. Yeah. So is the government prepared for it? And the funny thing here is that they took 1.7 lakh crore from the RBI, which were from reserves, which were supposed to protect us from global factors. And so you are saying one thing, you are saying, oh, global factors, okay, let's admit there are global factors in charge. But then what are you doing to protect us? What are you doing to make sure that it doesn't affect us in the future?
Mr. Desai.
Yeah, I would say that this is a very important point. We have not touched on it enough. That basically exports have stagnated for 7 years.
Yes.
It's not just because of the US-China trade war. There has been a serious failure on our export front, which we must understand. There's no time to get into those details. We also have not captured many. Look at, we buy so many cell phones, but the bulk of the materials for that cell phone are imported. We don't manufacture them here. We are major exporters of medicinal formulations, but most of the inputs of the active substance in the medicinal formulations are imported from China. So I would say we have a potential here. I would say the government must now realize that really the potential is in the millennials. The potential is in letting the system run. We need risk capital. Banks cannot provide risk capital. Loans are not enough. We need people who are willing to take risks. How did it happen in India? It happened because somebody invests in 10 startups, 8 of them fail, but they make a fortune on the other 2.
Yeah.
That's how the system
I want to take up this question. One issue.
I just want to make a point on exports, and I think it's important that we put it in perspective. We can't speak in generalities here. There is a certain advantage India has with what's happening in the world. The US-China trade war was a perfect occasion for us to seize the opportunity. We did not do that. What happened? Between April to July of this year, our exports actually got down by 0.4%. Our exports have been anemic. Vietnam has got orders from 2 big US factories to shift base from China to Vietnam. Has India got a single order? We actually got a slap on our back when US went ahead and withdrew the advantages worth $6 billion. Where is our global diplomacy? Why are we not putting our pressure behind exports? And let me also tell you, when Piyush Goyal says that exports will go up from $0.3 trillion to $1 trillion and it will help the $5 trillion economy, what he forgets is that the very data, the very statistic he blames for being Luddite will aid that. We will have to grow our exports at 20% every year. 20% every year is how we will have to grow our exports. Our exports have grown by 2.25% in the last recorded data of July. Why are we talking about these lofty generalities when we have no plan on the ground?
Mr. Ghosh?
See, I take the question directly. I'll tell you the statistics. 2008-9, the export was 8.4 lakh crores. And 2018-19, it has gone up to 20.8 crores.
Please mention the dollar figure.
That's the dollar figures and also the percentile figure.
It's lakh crores. It's lakh crores, right? We'll talk on that. So if you see the growth of 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, so very steady rate of around 1 to 1.6 lakh crore, the trade, the export is growing. So what ma'am is telling that we are horribly failing in export targets and this and that, That statistics is not showing this.
Which statistic
You
is
should
this
speak
that you're
on percentage growth and not on base growth. That's a faulty way of speaking
I'm
on
afraid
exports.
anybody who sees the dollar figures can show manufacturing exports of India have virtually stagnated for 7 years. In 2018-19 there was growth, but this year it is about 3%. These are the numbers, and there's no point in trying to find
Actually,
it.
there are only 9 sectors that have
Government is not
positive
there
demand.
to do the business.
There are
Government is there to do
there's
the
no point
policy.
in saying it's
Not
all doing
because
well.
of the policy,
Recognize
sir.
the problem
Because
and
of the
solve it.
competition.
Don't
Because of
say
the,
I've
not
already
because of the
solved it.
policy. You are always blaming government for the
Have you understood
policies.
what he said, though, what Mr.
Yeah.
Desai said?
Recognize the problem and solve it. Don't keep on saying, I have already solved the problem.
No economy has grown without a 15%
First of all,
growth
we are
in
recognizing
exports.
the problem, but for whom the problem is coming?
No economy in the world has grown without a 15% growth in exports. The figures that you're quoting are base figures.
When
Let
this
us talk.
country- when
Let
this
me
country
finish,
last
sir.
seen 50%
Let me.
growth, please tell me.
Yes,
Actually, yes, we did.
2004, 2008 to 2010.
Yes,
Our
we grew
period
at
of
nothing
high
less than
growth was a
20%.
period also of high export growth.
Yes.
2008-9, it was 8.4 lakh
From
crores.
2004,
Sir, you were talking
please
about
look at
base
your
figures.
numbers before you
Exports
come
have
in.
to be spoken in percentile figures. You cannot quote statistics when it suits your convenience. That is another problem.
Can I ask a last question to all of you? And I'll ask with Prateek first. We've heard Dr. Manmohan Singh, the former Prime Minister, actually saying that this slowdown is a dangerous one. There is an atmosphere of gloom and doom is how he has described it. As an entrepreneur, would you actually like to see the government reach out to the opposition, to someone like Dr. Manmohan Singh, other, economists, leaving party lines aside and trying to brainstorm and find a way to deal with this crisis? Would you like to see that?
Certainly, everyone would like to see that, because country's economy or interest is the major thing. It's not all about politics. So, and Dr. Manmohan Singh is one of the most learned person we have ever as a Prime Minister. So, nothing wrong in that. We are more bothered about our economy and the liquidity in the market. Until and unless that is getting resolved, whether it is getting resolved with outreaching the opposition or by the government themselves. So, we really as a common man, we are not bothered about that, frankly speaking. We are more bothered about the things should come in streamline and we should have proper business. That's what we want. And to do that, their government has to reach out, whoever they want to, they can do it, but
the initiative has
to be taken.
Right. Mr. Ghosh, why not reach out to Dr. Manmohan Singh and have a meeting? Do you think that that's a good idea?
Yeah, that's a good idea, always academic exercise. But when Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister of this country, you will see the statistics, what you're talking about.
Yeah,
you
they're actually a little better than they are right now.
The highest rate of growth.
Don't
But
take
see,
this
that's
quadrant.
the problem. You're dismissing
Overall,
it as an academic exercise.
Overall,
You're
from
not even
2000,
trying.
that's what I'm telling you.
No.
That you have to devote
Why
another
not?
session.
Why not make
and
an
we have to
attempt?
come back with all
Rise
statistics.
above politics. Rise above politics. Say that let's call the former Prime Minister. Let's call other economists
Our
as well.
finance minister
Let's do this for
regularly
India.
meeting with
This is
all
not about anything else.
representative of the society, including the business houses, including
the
the
opposition.
professionals. Almost every alternative, the meetings are going on. We are taking feedback from we don't need a feedback from one single person. We need to feedback from the market, from the business houses, from the experts, from the professionals, and that we are taking regularly.
And that is also one of the problems, by the way, because then what you do is you keep changing GST rates again, policy after policy changes. My whole point here is that I have a few suggestions of what we can probably do, I guess.
We'd like to be a constructive TV show for a change.
One is that I think we need some major bureaucratic executive reforms. We have to the government has to tell them to not be so proactive by going after businessmen and going after
tax
terrorism. That's just a no-no. That is the first thing that business people get scared of. That curbs innovation. That curbs everything else. The second thing is, I think the government should stop being interventionist. I think what maybe the government can do is put a 1-year policy freeze on economic policies. If you think you are doing the right thing, then pause. Stop it here, tell the business community no more economic changes for the next 1 year. And they can also fix the GST rates for 1 year and not change it. And this can be based on proper projections for the year. They have economists, they are saying. They have a team, they are saying. So then have a projection for a year, freeze the economic policies for a year and see what happens. If you think you are right, give it time. They might innovate. Businessmen in India are innovative. They survive despite this downturn
But
or
don't
whatever
keep
it is.
changing it
Yeah,
ad hoc.
exactly. And the last point I would like to say is an attitude point, and which is about headline management, is please stop with the arrogance. You know, please do not keep bringing in the Congress government and what happened 10 years ago that was great or not great, or then, you know, coming up with like, it's been 6 years since you have been in power, you have been given the mandate to make proper structural reforms. We are with you, please do it. But then don't do it too often. Just do it once, stop, see what happens, then do it again. I'm not saying don't do it.
Neelima, your suggestions as we last quick comments.
Yeah, looking.
I mean, do you think there is an argument here to be made to have an all-party outreach?
Absolutely. I think every party has to put India and the poorest of Indians before anyone else or their party ideology. There's no scope for ego here. I mean, that is very hurtful, and believe me, these TV shows are also seen across the country. I don't know what people would be thinking about such a thing, that, you know, one party would not reach out to another party just because it's from the opposition, even if it is for solving problems. Apart from that, I also have some basic observations on how we have been watching and observing economy. I think we have indicators which daily tell us about the state of our stock markets, Nifty, etc. But why don't we have an indicator like that for rural distress, for rural economy, something which tells us the state of our rural economy, the indicators, 5 or 10 of them every day, so that we know that this is how the country is going.
Like a human development
yes,
index.
as an index. The second thing is that whether it's through PM Kisan or anything, there should be no shortfalls. Now, according to one research, there is a 50% shortfall in the second installment of the PM Kisan. That's something a farmer, a poor woman farmer, especially labor, they cannot afford. That's something the government must expedite if they are serious about dealing with this distress. The last point is about sentiment. And I have heard a lot about the sentiment of the industry, sentiment of the business. What about the sentiment of the poor? Now let this government come out and say that there's not going to be one more death, one more suicide because of distress in this country. Can our Prime Minister, who's so popular, can actually go and make this promise? I would love to hear that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much to all of you for joining us on The Big Fight today. We're hoping over the next few weeks to actually continue to take a look at the economy and particular sectors in some more depth, because this is, believe me, the big story and will continue to remain the biggest story of 2019. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.